Hello guys, I realize this is kind of a weird way to start the video. However, I've just begun editing this review and I've realized there's a little piece of fucking fluff that has been on my beard the whole way through filming. Now, do you know how infuriating that is? Do you know how much that's pissed me off? Oh my god, I'm gonna try not to be paranoid, so don't roast me in the comments. And let's hope that little piece of fucking fluff doesn't piss you off as it has done to me. But yeah, enjoy the video. Hello guys, welcome to the Popcorn Podcast. My name is Dylan, of course, and I hope everyone's doing amazing. So I just finished the very highly anticipated Zack Snyder's Justice League, more commonly known as the Snyder Cut. Some of you watching right now might be hardcore comic book fans like myself, and others might just straight up be movie fans also like myself. Just a reminder that if you do fall into either of those two categories, to consider subscribing to the Popcorn Podcast channel, because over here we talk both of those things. So just before we get into the review for the Snyder Cut, I thought I might take a minute to briefly discuss my relationship with the DCEU as a whole. I've always been a big fan of this universe through both the good and the bad, and when it comes to Zack Snyder's films, I acknowledge that they are flawed. However, I still love them more than most people. You can tell that this is a filmmaker who is first and foremost a fan of this material and is making his movies very much so for the fans. And in that respect, this film is actually pretty monumental because it's the first time a studio has actually gone back and changed one of their releases, Warner Brothers actually listened to the fans and allowed Zack Snyder to go back and finish his original vision for the film, and rightly so. So on that note, boy, I never thought I'd be saying this, but let's get into what I thought of a Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've seen 2017's Justice League and you more or less know what the film is about. It takes place after the events of Batman vs Superman and focuses on both Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince as they attempt to recruit new heroes, those being the Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, and eventually a resurrected Superman, to fight in an alliance against Steppenwolf and the parademons of Apocalypse, who have ultimately come to conquer Earth for the one and only dark side. First things first, I just want to clarify that Zack Snyder's Justice League is much better than the version we got back in 2017. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect film, but it is a huge step up in quality. So one of the most noticeable differences with this film is the aspect ratio. I believe the film is showcased in the 4:3 or 1:33:1 aspect ratio. So I think that might put off a lot of people from watching this movie. And if you're wondering whether or not it takes away from the film visually, I can confirm that I certainly don't think so. In fact, I really admire it for being different. I think that you get used to it pretty quickly, and it definitely wasn't a problem on my end. Also, since we're on the topic of visuals, as you'd expect from a film by Zack Snyder, they are stunning, and I think they do a really great job in reflecting the tone of the story being told. Speaking of which, I'm really glad that this film adopts a more serious and mature sensibility to it, because it allowed for that grand, epic feel and scope that a film with the fucking Justice League very much needs. The film is also 4 hours long. I expect some people to really feel the runtime, but for me personally, it was alright. The action sequences showcased in the film were very satisfying to watch, and you could often find me having a big smile across my face as they went down. I know a lot of people don't really like how Zack Snyder tackles action, but for me, I've always been a fan of how he helms that aspect of his films. The music by Tom Holkenborg, I believe that's how you say his name, it was decent. I loved how they used Hans Zimmer's original scores for Wonder Woman BVS and of course Man of Steel, as well as some newer compositions for this film, some of which worked and others which didn't really work. There was this new theme for the Amazons that they tried to introduce as a leitmotif for the film, but I felt like it just got a bit too overused. But speaking of the Amazons, one of my favorite sequences in this whole film is earlier on, one big sequence that takes place on the Themyscira. I was literally getting goosebumps as to how epic that shit was. It gave me a lot of vibes from the film 300, which I remind you guys was also directed by the man himself, Zack Snyder. Anyways, moving on to the characters, I think they were handled so much better this time around, and one of the reasons why they worked a lot better was just because they were given so much more material to work with. What I felt happened with the 2017 version is I feel like the studio very much tried to streamline the film down so much that they ended up cutting way too much out of the movie, and it took away so much from the experience that we didn't care about any of the characters that we were watching. Luckily here with the Snyder Cut, in many ways it actually feels like a completely different movie. Now, Batman is probably my favorite superhero of all time. I loved him in BVS, but in 2017's Justice League he was turned into a joke. Here, Zack Snyder puts a lot more respect back into the character through showcasing him very much as the leader of this group. You also get to see more with Alfred, which is the dynamic that I never say no to. I think Ben Affleck and Jeremy Irons are terrific on screen together. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is charming and incredibly badass as always. I don't think she varied too much from the previous version of the film, but her fight scenes were a lot more entertaining to watch. The same goes for Jason Momoa's Aquaman and Henry Cavill as Superman. Ezra Miller as the Flash was a lot more likable this time around. Before, I felt like he was a little cringy, mainly because of the dialogue that was written for him, but here it's considerably better and I found him to be a lot more humorous. I'm also thankful that he wasn't just sidelined and he was actually integral to the plot, particularly in one of the scenes towards the end of the film. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. However, the biggest surprise for me personally was Ray Fisher's Cyborg. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the character from the comics, and in the 2017 version of Justice League, I just didn't care for him whatsoever, but here in the Snyder Cut, it was almost the complete opposite. His arc was so much more fleshed out. You get glimpses into his past before he got powers, you get to see the troubled relationship he has with his father. I mean, I won't get into it too much, but I feel like his character was very much so the heart of this movie. With regards to the villains of this film, Steppenwolf is more or less the same character, except for the fact that he looks a hell of a lot better. However, the main antagonist that a lot of us are probably most excited for is Darkseid. He isn't in the film an awful lot, however, I think in the limited time he does appear, he steals the show just because of how brooding and how menacing he is. I'm really hoping this is not the last we get to see of him. As for flaws with Zack Snyder's Justice League, the main one that comes to mind is the fact that there is a hell of a lot of exposition dumps. There are certain moments in the film where I feel like the momentum of the story just stops because someone has to explain something, like whether it be a new power that a character gets or explaining an artifact like the mother boxes. Also, there's a lot of details and story beats in the film that I feel like if you're not a fan of this material, you're not going to enjoy it as much as others. Me personally, I really appreciate all those little details and the nods to the comics and the storylines they bring in from the source material, particularly that epilogue scene. However, in terms of progressing the narrative forward, I don't think it does that much. An example of this would be Superman's black suit. Now, as a fan, I really appreciate Zack Snyder for including that, and I think it's the coolest fucking thing ever. But does it really enhance the storytelling? Not really. I mean, I guess that's the problem with fan service. It can either be a blessing or it can be a curse. Overall, for me, I'm more towards the former, but I think that for a lot of people, the latter will definitely apply. To conclude this review, I'm going to give Zack Snyder's Justice League a B+. I think the film has a lot going for it that is great. With regards to the story, I mean, it's not that different from the 2017 version. However, it is so much more satisfying to watch, and I think it's a big step up in almost every single way. Honestly, I would love to see Zack Snyder come back for more films. I think he's given the DCEU so much more longevity, and I think this franchise owes a lot to him. So let's restore the Snyderverse. I'm not sure why I did the Black Panther gesture there, but fuck it, let's just roll with it. So that is it from me for now, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, but more importantly, comment your thoughts down on Zack Snyder's Justice League. Did you like it? Were you disappointed by it? Let me know. Also, if you do love movies, TV shows, and cinema in general, consider subscribing to the Popcorn Podcast to jump on board the channel. But for now, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you very soon in the next video.